announcements. Good morning, and welcome to the Massachusetts Parole Board. I'm going to ask the two of you to please introduce yourselves.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Richards, CPCS Youth Advocacy Division.
And sir?
Good morning. My name is Chaleunphong.
And welcome back to the Massachusetts Parole Board. I do know that you were here 2 years ago. Before I go any further, sir, I'm just going to ask to the best of your ability, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just go through some of the basics. My name is Paul Tressler. With me today are the board members Tina Hurley.
Morning.
Lucy Soto-Abbey.
Good morning.
Dr. Charlene Bonner.
Good morning, sir.
And Sheila Dupree.
Good morning.
So you have a 5-member board present today. Mr. Tommy Coleman is not present, but will be a voting member. This is being recorded, both audio and visual. He'll watch it. He has all the materials. He, too, will vote. Sir, this is a review hearing. You went through it 2 years ago, but let me just walk you through how we're going to proceed today. You'll be afforded the opportunity to make an opening statement. Followed by the opening statement, there'll be questions from the board, obviously. I'm the lead today, so I'll be the person asking the questions up front, and then it will go down the line, and then come back down this way and end with board member Tina Hurley. Followed by that, sir, you'll have the opportunity to call witnesses if you have witnesses who are present here today who you would like to call in support of your petition for parole. And do you have witnesses, counsel?
We do.
And how many witnesses plan on testifying?
We will have 3 witnesses testifying. The 4th witness is his father. Has prepared a letter, which I'm going to read, because I learned yesterday that the efforts to secure a Laotian interpreter could not happen for some reason. So what we've been able to do in the interim is a mother of a family friend is here on behalf of the parents, and she is going to be interpreting as you're sitting there in the audience.
Perfect. And I know that Ms. Crosby talked to me earlier in the week, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
And you'll read the letter. That will be the 4th. Could I ask the 3 witnesses who plan on testifying in support of the petition to please stand up at this point? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Thank you. So, sir, followed by those who are in support, those in opposition will also be afforded an opportunity to speak. And is there opposition who plans on testifying today?
Good morning. Yes, we possibly have one family member that will be speaking. It will be Lydia Flores, the victim's sister. She is not here yet, but she is on her way. And followed by the Assistant District Attorney Clarence Brown from the Middlesex District Attorney's Office.
If she shows up just before she testifies, will you just remind me that I need to swear her? Thank you. And sir, so after that occurs, so that there might be 2 over here who are testifying, and then we'll refocus on you, sir, and afford you the opportunity to make a closing statement, either through counsel or through yourself, to the board. Any questions about how we're going to proceed?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, then why don't we get to it, and how are we going to proceed on the openings?
I'm going to start. Mr. Chaleunphong is going to make his opening statement.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the Parole Board, and anyone who was showed up here today for this hearing. I would like to acknowledge that I am fortunate to be here before you all today. First, I'd like to send my deepest heartfelt apologies to the Molina family, the Santana family, and the Lozada family for my actions on November 20th, 1997, when my gang and I ambushed and brutally attacked Mr. Molina and his friends which resulted in death of Ms. Molina and the emotional and physical trauma inflicted on Mrs. Santana and Ms. Lozada. I take complete responsibility for my actions, and not a day goes by where I'm not shameful for what I've done. That night, I took away a son. Brother and a friend. Mr. Molina loved to play basketball. He loved to dance. He loved to draw. His family loved him very much. And it's painful to know that I didn't give Mr. Molina the opportunity to live out any potential dreams he may have had for himself and for his family. I'm extremely sorry for the pain and suffering I brought to Mr. Molina's family, Mr. Santana's family, and Mr. Lozada's family. I will never forget my initial hearing when Mr. Molina's sister described her last moments with her brother before he came to visit Lowe. And I sat, thought about what she said for the past 2 years. It's painful to know that because of my actions, I didn't give the family of Mr. Molina's family, Mr. Santana's family, and Mr. Lozada's family the opportunity to create many more memories with Mr. Molina. You know, I'm shameful for that. I would like to also apologize to the greater community for being part of the problem and not part of the solution. My parents brought me in America because they saw a bright future here for our family. A place where they could send me to good schools and live peacefully amongst the community members. But I ruined my parents' American dream because I made a choice to create a gang called the Lowe's Boys. And with this gang, I only brought pain and suffering and took away any sense of safety from my victim's family and the greater community. Since my initial hearing, I have learned more and more about myself by participating in many more programs. And through the Restorative Justice Group and weekend retreats, I've learned how my actions as a gang member affected my community in a negative way, and why I must become aware of the cause and effects of my actions. The Leadership and Transformation Program taught me how to become a much better leader by utilizing the skills that I currently have within me. And through this program, I was inspired to create a meditation class where men would help men deal with their stress and their anxiety. I'm currently a mentor in the Correctional Recovery Academy, and being a mentor puts me in a position to deal with people of all race, crimes, and attitudes. And I am able to learn from different people and relate with them. And through sharing and understanding each other, that's helped me to become a much better person. Since I've been involved in programming, I have become a much better person each and every day. Being in the program environment has meant more than just completing them. It has taught me so much more about myself when I put into practice what I've learned. For instance, I developed skills to help me make the right choices and cope when I'm going through difficulties. Furthermore, through these programs, I was able to help men find self-empowerment and encourage them to make the positive choices in life. Although I was fortunate to be in a position to mentor so many men in prison, I was also blessed to be mentored myself. In the past 2 years, I built deep relationships with so many people, wonderful people, that was with me along this journey of change. One of them was a man by the name of Khalil, who really helped me a lot through correspondence. Someone that I could write to and share thoughts and difficulties with. Miss Lynn Levy, who comes by and visits me monthly, has encouraged me to keep on doing what I've been doing so that I can utilize some of the stuff that I've learned in prison on society someday. And my politics team, who's been there for me throughout my whole academic career, and I'm just mentoring me through the whole process of going to school. These are all amazing people who have given me so much love and attention and helped guide me through many different aspects of my life. It's been close to 20 years now since I committed this senseless act of violence. I now have a better understanding of the effects of my behavior and the trauma I inflicted on my victim's family and the greater community. During my journey of change, I worked extremely hard into connecting the dots in my life so that I could better understand why I became that person that night on November 20th, 1997. And through many years of internal work, I come here before you as a person of compassion, a person of insight, a person of change. And I'm sorry to having to put everyone through this again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So why don't we pass, sir? And as I said, you were here 2 years ago. And at some point after that hearing, you received a record of decision. And that record of decision, you learned that there was a split vote, and you got a 2-year setback, right?
Yes.
Which is why we're here today. And can you tell us what thoughts you had when you received that record of decision from the parole board?
I was a little disappointed. I was going to, I was disappointed because, you know, it was a denial. I thought I came up here and really demonstrated change through just my work in prison and how much I put the work on within myself. It was a tough moment for me, but I came out of it, you know.
So would you mind just telling us, like, so it was sometime around December 10th that you would have received that notice, right?
Yeah.
And someone delivers you the actual notice?
Yeah.
And could you tell us, like, what you went through? Like, you probably opened up the decision, you looked for the final decision, right? Yeah. Walk us through that.
Well, I was called up. I was actually that day I was preparing for finals for my drama class, and I had to do a skit. It was a role play throughout the materials that we got throughout the whole semester. While I was preparing for that, I was called to go to the second floor in the HSU, which is the hospital building. And when I went up there, Miss Fenneman at the time told me that to reach a decision, and she handed me the paper, and she pretty much informed me before I even read it that it was a setback, and it was a 2-year setback. And I remember I was shaking. I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't know. I thought about my parents. I thought about Mr. Molina. I didn't know how to. I thought about how I was going to explain that to my parents. And then when I came back I had to go, still try to be ready for my finals, and I was trying to calm down, took a few deep breaths. I think I meditated a little too that day, so I could just at least be in the moment for the finals, and then I went there, took the test, did what I had to do, and then I had to make that phone call. And that's when, just heard from my parents.
So it was a tough day for you.
It was.
At some point in the coming days or weeks, were you able to process what that decision actually meant?
Yeah. It took, after a while, after talking to family, and them, encouraging me to keep on doing what I have to do, I kept on reading the decision over and over again. And I understand, I understood that, that there was still some work that probably needed to be done. And that,
at any point in the process, did you actually get grateful that it was a 2-year and not a 3 or 4 or 5? How long did that take?
Probably a day or two after. After I just, I spoke to my parents and I wrote a few letters, and the response I was getting, I was feeling more better about myself. And I kept on telling myself that it was only a 2-year setback, and that, I could do the 2 years, and I could, use those 2 years to my advantage.
Okay. So this board is presently comprised. I was the only member who wasn't here 2 years ago. The rest of the board, including Mr. Coleman, who's not here today but will be a voting member, and I have had the opportunity to review and study the last hearing, so it's almost as if I was here. So what I'd like to do, if I could, is talk about the last 2 years. Like, what you've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what efforts you've made to continue your rehabilitation.
All right. The last 2 years, I still remain in school. I think the last 4 semesters, I've managed to have 8 more courses.
I think you had 36 credits at your last hearing, right?
Yeah, now I have
What are you up to?
68. The reason for that, I wish I could have taken more, but I know the BE program right now is in Norfolk is going through some difficulties with funding. There's not too many professors that are there to hold courses, so there were 1 or 2 semesters where they would only let us select 1 class, and the other the other semester was only like 2. So I've also I'm still a mentor in the CRA, where I've been involved in that for about over 3 years now. With my role as a GSP and a mentor is to facilitate classes, be a positive role model in the community, mentors, many mentees there. It's a good experience because, I get to learn from people from all different ethnic groups, different people for different upbringings, and, just sharing and having conversations with them really, I come to find that we have a lot of similarities with each other. So, we all want to change and to better ourselves. So it's been in the CRA, and the CRA community is a good place to be in, where, you build good friendships with a lot of guys who are on the same path and on that same path of recovery. I'm also still involved with the Asian cultural group, a group where I could pretty much let everybody in the population know about my culture, my heritage, where I came from, let them know about my history, my parents' history, so that they could see, so that the population in Norfolk could really see a beautiful side of my country, my culture. I'm also did the Leadership and Transformation Program, where the program pretty much taught me really to become the leader that didn't know I was capable of being. But some of the qualities that I have now with the communication skills and learning how to lead projects. And one of the projects that we did, well, one of my projects for the program, because each person had to come up and create their own project, was the meditation class. The program taught me, asked us to see what's missing in around your environment, and come up with an idea and take steps in how you could bring forth that idea and bring it to fruition. And that's what I did with the meditation class. So, the leadership and transformation class taught me to really put in proposals to the CRA program, because that was the only place where I could hold these classes. So I filed many proposals and thought that it would be a good idea where we could hold a meditation class in the CRA, because there's guys that go through a lot of stress at times, and the anxiety kind of heightens because you take a lot of classes. You're dealing with these are guys that dealing with terms and topics that they haven't dealt with in a while, so sometimes they come back and they get all stressed out and they come talk to the mentors. We kind of help them through it, but now it's good to also have a class in there where we could go in there and just sit and quiet the mind for a little bit and meditate and just try to be in the moment, and then hopefully they get to come out of that class and be more mindful throughout their day.
Well, we saw you last, I think you had enrolled but not started the 8-week restorative justice, and what was the name of that program? It was...
Restorative Justice Reading Group?
Or BOSS. It may have been the reading group.
Yeah.
Were you able to get into that?
Yes. Oh, you're talking about the vote?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I didn't get into the vote, but I took a step before the vote where you start off with the reading group first. The reading group was... It's an 8-week course, and it was like a book discussion group where we was discussing on a book called Teens Who Hurt by Kevin Hardy, and just understanding where teens who deals with anger and how they join gangs and where it all came from. We talk about the community and how one's action and how they affect the community, and
When you read that book, was it telling your story?
It did. It did, especially when it talked about not feeling the emotional bonding at home in your household, not feeling comfortable opening up and sharing, and how when you leave that household, how you have the void in your life, and how you try to find it elsewhere because you didn't get it or you didn't feel it at home, and then I got it with a group of guys that
So you did the 8 weeks for Teens Who Hurt. Is there a next step to that?
There will be the vote right after that.
So are you on the list?
Yeah, I'm on the list. So I'm just...
You're lobbying to get in?
Yeah. I don't know when it will stop, but I know they finished one sometime in July. I knew that, but I don't know if they'll probably start one again in the fall.
Okay, so in the last 2 years, you've done all that programming. Any D reports?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about your work. Are you still the function coordinator?
Yes.
Okay. How's that going?
I love it. It's a job I enjoy doing. My job requires me to pretty much hold the calendar for there's a CSD building in Norfolk where it's called Community Service Department, where they hold programs, events, retreats, concerts at times, and I'm the guy that pretty much schedules the groups that want to hold these events in the CSD building. So
you get lobbied from all sorts of people.
Yeah, so between 20 to 25 different groups. They'll come to me, at least pretty soon I'm going to send out notices to inform the groups to let them know that I'm about to put the schedule down for 2018. then I work with like so many different groups where we won't have any conflict with one another, and that everybody's happy with their dates, and we try to schedule events closest as possible to the, like how they celebrate it everywhere, rather than just in Norfolk.
Will that cause tension? Like, that seems like a difficult position to be in.
It does. At times it does, because, you have guys that approach you that are so passionate about their group and whatever they're trying to put forth, and sometimes they want to pretty much hold it at a specific time and day. Sometimes the administration don't agree with that, and what I do is I try to calm them down before that. Just try to get them to understand that this is how it works, and be mindful that regardless of what day or what time you're going to hold this event, that you're still going to get it done.
So who's your contact at the administration at the DOC level?
The Director of Treatment.
And who's that?
Lisa Curto. Miss Lisa Curto, yeah.
And if she was here today, what would she say about you?
She'll say that I'm a good worker, a hard worker, very well organized, a very good communicator that knows how to talk to the groups, that gets the job done when it needs to get done, and having good conversations with her too, and brainstorming on different events that we could bring to Norfolk that would benefit the population there. So, I think she would really be impressed with how I've done so far.
And how old are you today?
37.
And how old were you when you committed this act?
17.
Which kind of brings us naturally to the act itself. And I don't need to belabor it and go into the detail. We did it 2 years ago. And it was a horrific crime.
Yes, it was.
And it's hard to imagine how a human being was able to do what you did that day. But having read your whole profile, it's also I don't think it would surprise anybody if they read where you were in life and where you were going, that this is how it ended, right? Or at least that chapter of your life ended. And I'll say, when I read it before I watched the hearing, so I read all the material. And the fact is, that day, you were going to hurt somebody, and this was your third attempt. When this horrific murder occurred, it was the third attempt that day to actually hurt somebody. And as you think back 20 years ago, you as a 17-year-old, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you manage yourself and think about what you were able to do?
I was at a bad place in my life at the time. 17 years old, 16, 17. I was at a bad place. I was hurt. I was an angry kid. I didn't know how to. I felt powerless a lot of times. I didn't know. I felt like I had no outlet. Like when I wanted to talk or when I wanted to share anything with somebody, the only one was the gangs, and I felt more comfortable with them. I realized that, it was just hard for me to really just find somebody to talk to that was more positive. I think I might have had it there, but I just didn't recognize it at the time. But yeah, I was.
As you sit here today, can you believe that you actually performed the acts that led to you sitting in that chair?
No. I can't believe I was just that person at all. Period.
When is like the first time you really thought about what you had done and you felt some semblance of either guilt or empathy towards what you had done to Mr. Molina?
It was probably about, not in the beginning of my incarceration. It was, I've always felt bad. I just didn't know how to feel for it at the time. Like, I knew I did something wrong. I knew I took another person's life, and I was wrong for doing that. But for me to really feel it, came from a retreat, a Buddhist retreat.
What year?
In Norfolk. It was about 2010, I believe, 2009, 2010. It was an exercise that we did, and the monks, and they came, and it was, I want to say blessing us was like the water that they put together, but as they were doing it, they just kept on telling us to think about all the harm that we done. You know, it was like a letting go exercise, but it was just to reflect on the harm that we done and the people that we hurt in life, and that's all I kept on thinking about was Mr. Molina. And that's when I really felt it, and that's when I really felt the emotions and I know that I took another person's life, a family man's life, and that was pretty much like the first time I really cried in prison, because, you know, I put in a facade for a long time, but, you know, I haven't stopped crying since then. Yeah, please. Thank you.
So what have you learned about the hurt that your actions 20 years ago has created for the family who, you know, keeps getting letters from the parole board and asked to come back here? It's like the hurt that won't go away.
Yeah.
Well, what have you learned about it? What do you think about it?
I can only imagine what the family had to go through, like how they have to deal with it. You know, there's somebody in their life that's not there. How they have to change their life around and not live a normal life because of what I did that night. You know, them getting letters from the parole board telling them to come here again, it's got to be tough to have to relive this all over again, and just to hear it and to go through this again. I can only imagine what the family has to go through, but I know that I inflicted a lot of pain and suffering in their lives, and I know that because of that they have to, that they're living a life where they probably don't want to live because of my actions. That they probably wish that everybody was there with them.
Okay, let's talk about the home plan. You have a detainer, right? A nice detainer.
Yes.
That's in question, right? As to what's going to transpire there.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me in your words?
The detainer is pretty much from immigration, because I wasn't born here. I was born in a refugee camp, Thailand, and they will come and give me if I've granted parole, and they'll see what they could do if they could deport me back to my country. From my understanding, Laos doesn't have any type of agreement with America right now, so there's a good possibility that I won't get sent back. But if I do,
your mom's family,
yeah,
mom still has family there,
yes,
right?
My mom still has family there. Well, we stayed with her younger brother, with my uncle, and you know, work with him, and he lives in the farm, and he has his own company, and I'll be stationed over there in the country called, I forgot the name of it, but it's in Laos.
Okay, so let's take it the other route. If you were to get parole, and ICE takes you into custody and then they release you from custody, what's the plan then?
Right now, we're currently looking for long-term residential. It's difficult right now because the houses won't accept you unless you're granted parole. The ICE detainer doesn't help as well because they stay away from that too. So depending on this, we'll see how we're going to go. Maybe after this hearing, we'll keep on trying to reach out to long-term residential. I'm still going to be accepted to the Haley Bakery Cafe, where it's a vocational school, and I could go learn another trade. They'll probably employ me there, where I can make some money, and then while I'm there, I'll probably save up enough money so I could go pursue my education and also try to get my barber's license as well.
Okay. You know, in reviewing your whole file, the thing that strikes me the most is that when you had no hope, right? When you had no hope prior to the change in federal law and then state law, you got involved in rehabilitation. Okay? And, you know, it's completely unique because others have done it as well. But my question for you is, like, why did you do it? When you thought you were serving and you were serving, right, a first-degree murder sentence.
Yes, it was.
With no hope of parole ever.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in time, you began to start new programming. Like, what in you made you do that?
It was, I began my change much earlier than that.
When do you think the change started?
It was when I was in the hole, actually. You know, and it was after a fight.
What was the year? Was that 2000?
Yeah, somewhere around there, 2000. Yeah, 2000. And there was a conversation I had with my mother. Yeah. It was a conversation I'll never forget because you hear the hurt in my mother's voice, you know, the pain. I know she was trying to cover it up and try to be like, you're going to do good, son, and all that, but I knew I let her down again, you know, even in prison. So having that phone call with mother, having to explain to her why she couldn't come visit me, and then why I'm in the hole, was like an eye-opener as to how I really wanted to live my life. And from then on, I know I can't disappoint them no more. So I kind of went to school, went after my GED, and, you know, started working more and all that. But when I came into Norfolk, when I really participated in the program, was when after I kept on, things didn't seem like it was going my way with my legal situations. I was getting denied appeals. Things didn't look right. My lawyers didn't seem too optimistic about my case.
Was that the glimmer of hope you were hanging on to, was like the appeals process and
At that time, yeah.
At that time?
Yeah, because I was still fighting for my life. I mean, I didn't want to die in prison, so I kept on appealing. And when my habeas corpus was denied, that's when I'm like, this could be it. I pretty much exhausted pretty much all my remedies, and I may spend the rest of my life in here. And
what year was that?
The denial was probably, I think it was 2004, 2005. But it took me some time after that to realize that this could be it. that I'm going to be living in Norfolk and walking the cars in the yard. And that's when I said, if I'm going to be in here, I might as well be the best. Be a different person than when I first came in and be the best person I can be. And that's when I started doing programs. And it was tough at first with change. Sometimes change is hard. And just to be in an environment that was much different now. So coming out of my comfort zone. But after I started learning a little bit more about myself, and it was just like, I just kept on building momentum from there and just go to every program that I get involved with. There was a lot of programs that didn't accept me, but I was adamant about it. I spoke to the people I needed to speak to. I did the best I can to really try to get in these programs because I was really starting to feel more better about myself.
When did the meditation and the Buddhism start playing a role?
Early on, at least it goes back to Susan Baranowski. But when I came to Norfolk, I was more involved. I was really showing up at first, chanting and meditating for a few years. But then I want to say until about 2008, 2009, around that time I started taking the teachings more seriously. I started reading more books on Buddhism, started really trying to understand the chants, and really just applying it to my life and, trying to find peace with what I have and whatever situation that I'm in.
Okay. And I just want to hit one topic, and then I'm going to move it along because I'm sure the other board members have questions. When you were here 2 years ago, you had begun the process of renouncing. Where do we stand on that?
I believe it's April 2016 when they officially renounced.
So it's official, it's done?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, with that I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to segue from that, so the official renouncement is a formality that we like to see that the DOC does their own investigation to declare you officially renounced. It appears that you literally renounced a long time ago.
Yeah.
When did that commitment take place?
Probably early in my incarceration. In my heart, I left the gang a long time ago. At that time, I didn't think about renouncing. I didn't think I needed any type of documentation to prove that because in my heart, I've always left it. But yeah, later on, I tried back in 2010, 2011 because I thought it was very important after a while to get it off that because I was really changing in my life. I was really feeling good about myself, and I know that still being labeled was something I didn't want no more. I wanted to be far away from being labeled a lost boy. I wanted far away from gangs, so I kept on pursuing the IPS officer who was in charge of the STG program I kept on reminding him to let him know how adamant I was to really try to get this off the books. So.
Okay, and why that is obviously central to your rehabilitation is the context of this murder was your gang affiliation. So, sir, I voted to parole you, so I'm going to tell you why, okay? When we have to make a public safety decision, there's a certain analysis involved around risk, right? I felt that you absolutely mitigated the risk and then went above and beyond to ensure that your rehabilitation was meaningful. I think your age factored into this, and obviously based on the SJC decision, they agree, and I think the whole board weighed that significantly. even those who voted for a 2-year denial, that was a big factor, your age. Dr. Haney provided a report to us which paints a picture of your life, and it was very helpful, and I know we talked about it in the last hearing. But you know, you're almost the reason why the Diachenko-Miller decision, I think, came about. Your developmental history, your trauma history, both within the refugee camp, although you were just a newborn, and then being second generation to your parents' trauma history was an all too familiar story, unfortunately, of the Laotian community, the Cambodian community, and we talked about that the last hearing as well. But it all matters, at least in my analysis, because I think those precipitants in the context of this murder all tied in to those issues, those developmental issues and your family issues. So I think that you did a really good job of addressing them. And then as the chairman pointed out, your meaningful change started before you even knew you were eligible for parole. So the public safety risk decision and that analysis is one thing, but you know what's harder for us to measure is someone's character. And some would say that doesn't even matter, that it shouldn't factor into a public safety decision. But I'll tell you what, it makes it a lot easier to release someone when you feel like their character is sound. I've also been impressed with your repentance. I think it's authentic, and not everybody who comes before us has meaningful repentance. Now, I say these things at the risk of, you know, accolades can sometimes be offensive to the victim's family, and I mean no disrespect. And I certainly don't want to make you out to be the victim. But your life history, as it relates to this murder, I feel like that you've rehabilitated yourself. So I don't have any other questions, sir. Thank you.
Morning, sir. As I was present during the last hearing, I was one of the board members that voted against your release with the 2-year setback. I want to commend you for the work that you've done in the past 2 years with the adverse vote that you were hoping not to get. So continue the good work.
Thank you.
I have no questions, sir. So did drugs or alcohol play a role in this?
Yes, it did.
It did. Were you intoxicated, high on drugs, or what were you using that day?
That day I was drinking.
Drinking?
Yeah, I had about like 3 to 4 bottles of Heineken, 6 or 7 shots of Canadian Mist.
Okay.
I was also drinking while I was driving too. So I was in the car, I was still drinking.
All right, any drug use that day?
Just that.
All right, and you haven't had any incidents of substance abuse during the last 20 years? No. All right, I just want to put on record, we have talked about Joshua Molina, but there was a second victim?
Yes.
What was his name?
Mr. Santana.
Okay, and he was severely beaten?
Yes, he was.
And what was your role in that?
I hit him with the hammer twice, a few times in the back while he was trying to get away, where he was trying to run from the scene. And I chased him down and I hit him.
Do you know what injuries he suffered?
I know he had a lot of injuries in the head and his face.
Do you know how he's doing today? Does he have a traumatic brain injury? Or?
No, I don't.
You don't know? All right, and just the last question that I have is, in terms of getting out, at some point you will be, whether it's today or down the road. What are your main concerns about returning to the community after serving 20 years?
It's crazy. I said it's probably just technology and just meeting new people, you know. That, you know, that hopefully I'll just be out there and succeed in society and do the right things. Concerns out.
All right, and you have a strong network of support.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that impressed us 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you know that you need to tap into that network if
Yes.
you're struggling, in addition to your parole officer, if you do get released.
Yes, I will.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
All right, at this point, sure, I'm going to ask that you take a seat with the corrections staff. Counsel, if you want to stay put and call the witnesses, that would be helpful.
So to begin with, as I had indicated, in lieu of his father testifying, I'm just going to read the letter that is in the materials, the translated copy as well as the untranslated. I am Gudlum Chaleunphong, the father of Vingsamai Chaleunphong. Today I'm very pleased to see my son again. I'm happy to know that the laws permit my son to be out on parole. I'm happy to know that my son worked hard, studied hard. You turned your life around. You are a changed man. I am so happy to know that you admitted what you did was wrong. You accepted responsibility for everything you did. Your mother and I have been going to see you at Norfolk facility almost every month. We realize that you really changed. The way you treat and talk to your mother or I and your friends has changed for the positive. Everything from your education to any tasks you performed is to be praised. I know that you changed to be a better person. You are a totally new man. In any case, if the laws and government permit you to go out on parole and you can go home to be with your father and mother, we will be so very happy. Both of us are very old. We have difficulty going anywhere. We sometimes ask for help from relatives, but they have to help their families too. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first witness we were asked to come is Miss Lynn Levy.
And ma'am, before you begin, I just a brief statement. I hear that things in SPAN are in flux, and regardless, ma'am, of what happens with SPAN, I want to thank you on behalf of the board for the 42 years of service you've provided to your clients and to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Of all the people who have worked in the system and the program, you're an all-star, and we do appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now I know why you were crying. I think the most that I can contribute here is the two things. One is looking at the choice to be more of a solution than a part of a problem. And I think that in the work that I have done, it has been beyond clarity that while there was initial choice as a youngster to be a major problem, there was a very fast turnaround to be a part of a solution. And the effort is an effort of stages that take place, especially in this situation when you know when you start that there is absolutely no chance that you're going to see the light of day in the community at all. And it's a slow start, especially for a youngster. But it was a start that was consistent, showed growth, and measured progress over time with some slips, but in essence, a steady growth toward being an adult. And it's easy to say taking responsibility, understanding what taking responsibility really means is something that, as I have come to know there is little question in my mind that he has not grasped the concept of taking responsibility. I also would say that, and I believe I put it in my letter, that although the end result of what is happening with SPAN as an agency, my work in this field will continue, and arrangements are being made as we speak to make sure that there is time and space to be able to do that. And I have made a very, very clear commitment to Viengsamai that through this process, I will continue to provide support to him, to anyone in his family who would be interested in being involved in that, and to take on what I believe is my life's work and my responsibility to make sure that a good, healthy reintegration to the community can take place with lasting effect and support. I don't believe in reentry. Reentry is what a rocket ship does when it comes back into the atmosphere after being out in a bad place. And reintegration is a process of steps that must be taken to come to understand not just what happened when you committed this offense, not just what happened to you to survive being in prison, but to address what will happen to you and how you shape what happens to you in the process of changing your life's mission from being an inmate to being a member of a community and taking responsibility for all of the work that entails. It is my belief, as I have come to know Viengsamai, that this is an individual who is well equipped to take this on, who will make difficult choices and will make the correct choices, will ask for help, as he has on a very consistent basis over many years, to make sure that the choices that he's making make sense. And I've also known him to, if I've made a suggestion and he didn't like it, we've had a very productive, responsible, meaningful conversation about what that means and how things can be amended so that they are effective. And I stand by that, and I give my word that I will support him as part of my moving ahead in my life's work, and I believe that he has demonstrated, with very little concern on my part, that he has the capacity to succeed. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next witness we would like to call is Kennedy Vongsenet, Mr. Chaleunphong's cousin.
Good morning. My name is Kennedy Vongsenet. I am Noah's first cousin, first friend. He's my first confidant. He was probably the kindest and quietest out of all the cousins. When we were younger, our parents were always working, and on their days off, they would have family gatherings. We would just play in the yard, around the neighborhood. We would have to look out for each other. Growing up in the mid to late 90s was difficult because there were so many different groups of gangs, especially in the project where we were from. Most of our parents held 2 jobs, and there were no free programs or activities to join like today, and no role models to point us in the right directions of volunteering or community service. Kids would join gangs for protection from others. Most of my cousins, including myself, joined these gangs. We were young and naive. Some of us were fortunate, some were not. Since Noah's incarceration, we've been closer, communicated more than before. We shared thoughts, help each other through tough times. Noah's compassion and understanding has helped me through more than 1 or 2 seemingly impossible hurdles. A couple years after he was found guilty of the murder, Noah decided to invest in change and development by taking advantage of the programs offered by the prison. He began programs like Alternatives to Violence program, which is known as the AVP, Correctional Recovery Academy, CRA, Emotional Awareness, the Buddhist group. He enrolled in the BU college program at the MCI Norfolk. He graduated from these programs, became the CRA mentor. He was also an event coordinator for the MCI Norfolk. In his free time, he would assist other inmates. He'll listen to their stories, share his thoughts. He would call to tell me how good it feels to help others and how nervous he was to speak in front of a large group of people. He was very excited when he was granted the parole hearing 2 years ago, but the result was not in his favor. The family and Noah were devastated after receiving the results, but Noah was able to get back to his normal routine after a couple of weeks. He's a very competitive person. He looked at the 2-year setback as an opportunity to continue improving. I believe with all the training that Noah has done, he is rehabilitated mentally and spiritually. If given a second chance, I believe he can contribute to others in the society. My family and I will be assisting Noah in every way we can. Although we did not have a good childhood, we hope to be better adults for the next generation. I consider Noah a good role model for my boys, showing that there's hope with forgiveness and there's such thing as success in rehabilitation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And our last witness would be Catherine Rady.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me the time to speak. My name is Catherine Rady, and I began working with Mr. Vieng Samai Noi Chaleunphong almost 4 years ago. I feel fortunate to know him. As an advocate that works with young people ensnarled in the juvenile justice system, I see many young people who have encountered very similar circumstances as Noi. Adolescents who have been exposed to trauma, who are disconnected from their family, who find their sense of self within a peer group, who make very bad choices and commit acts of violence. The young people that I work with could easily make the same choices that Noy made when he was 17 years old. To see the man that he is now gives me reassurance and comfort that change is very real and achievable. While in prison, Noy has held the role of a participant, facilitator, coordinator, mentee, mentor, and fundraiser. Through his extensive involvement in MCI Norfolk programming, Noy has learned how to acknowledge, identify, and then express his feelings, a practice that until prison he did not have. He now trusts himself, which in turn enables him to trust others. In listening to the stories of fellow inmates, of survivors of murdered loved ones, and the family of the man he killed, Noy hears the collective pain in these stories. He is able to share his own pain and is aware of and accepts that he himself caused so much pain. He is resolved to no longer be a perpetrator of hurt. He wants to be a part of the community and give back. As a student with Boston University's Metropolitan College program, Noy has his opinions and perspectives regularly challenged. He welcomes these different viewpoints. They expand his own mindset and help him to assess and negotiate different interpretations. It makes him a man that fellow inmates seek out to discourse with. As a renewed Buddhist, Noy practices mindfulness and meditation. He has grown more interested in his Laotian heritage and has worked hard to learn his parents' language so that their relationship can improve. Both mom and dad are beginning to open up more and more, and Noy hopes one day it will not be so difficult for any of them to say, "I love you." Members of the parole board, Noy comes before you today a changed man who is not the risk-taking, substance-using gang leader of his youth, but a self-reflected man who listens before he speaks, thinks before he acts, and approaches every day with one goal, to treat everyone with dignity. His multifaceted team of support will continue to work with him as he continues on his journey. Steps are still being taken to secure a long-term residential in the Boston area so that he can engage in the employment options and use the community groups already in place for him. Additionally, he will have access to local community health centers and Boston Medical Center, where he can be referred for therapeutic services. His family and all other collaterals remain committed to helping their son, their brother, their cousin, their uncle, and their client make a safe reintegration and are committed to remain a lasting support. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel.
And now opposition is going to call Assistant District Attorney Clarence Curran from the Middlesex District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am an Assistant District Attorney with the Middlesex DA's office. I work in the Superior Court office in Lowell, Massachusetts, and much of the focus of my work is concentrated on violence in the city of Lowell, and particularly violence that arises out of gang activity. I know that one of the statements that was made earlier was a desire by the board to not belabor the details of the crime involved in this particular case, but I do think that there are some factors and some specific details of that crime that are relevant to the board's decision. In particular, as those relate to the inmate's involvement or responsibility for the crime, and also the nature of the crime itself. One of the things that was said earlier in the hearing was that when asked regarding the Laos Boys, Mr. Chaleunphong stated that he created the Laos Boys and was in fact a founder of the group. That involvement in the group carried over to this particular instance where Mr. Chaleunphong was not merely a participant in the crime that led to the death of Mr. Molina and the serious injuries to Mr. Santana, but was an instigator of that incident. As he stated in his own statements at the prior parole hearing, Mr. Chaleunphong was at a friend's house drinking with a number of fellow gang members. I believe he initially stated 13, and that 10 of them entered into 2 cars, going out, as he termed it, hunting. As was stated earlier in this hearing, this was not a circumstance where there was a particular person who was the target of their intended violence, but it was an intent to commit violence upon someone. Initially, they went to the homes of 2 gang members where, when they were not able to carry out their violent intent, they destroyed property and terrorized residents who were present in those homes. When they were unsuccessful in enacting violence on rival gang members, they came across Mr. Molina, Mr. Lozada, and Mr. Santana, who, according to the testimony at the initial trial, were not actually members of gangs. I say that that's significant in that had they been rival gang members, perhaps when they encountered Mr. Chaleunphong and his compatriots, they would have understood the risk that they faced. They would have understood the likelihood that violence would ensue, and they would perhaps have been prepared for a fight. Instead, Mr. Molina and Santana greeted the individuals who were in the car, and according to some of the testimony at trial, actually shook hands with individuals in the car before walking away, not realizing what was about to come. Mr. Chaleunphong and his compatriots then laid in wait, hiding behind Arnold's Diner in Lowell until such time as these victims walked past them, could not see them there, approached them without warning, and did in fact ambush them. Specifically with respect to the incident, and I am remiss to bring this up in the presence of the family, but Mr. Molina was attacked by Mr. Chaleunphong while he was curled in a fetal position on the ground, according to testimony, immobile, and completely helpless to defend himself against the attack. He had already been knocked down, possibly knocked unconscious, before Mr. Chaleunphong landed several blows to his head with a hammer, which, according to the autopsy report, each of which may have been the fatal blow. This is not a situation of merely an act of gang violence where we are fighting over turf or drug money or some other perceived slight. This is not an act of anger or temper. This is a planned, orchestrated, deliberate effort to kill someone that resulted in the death of one innocent person and severe injuries to another. I would state in response to one of the questions regarding Mr. Santana, his injuries, Mr. Santana did in fact testify at the trial that he was beaten unconscious and regained consciousness in the hospital after this incident. He had suffered lacerations to his head, nose, mouth, and fingers. He had a number of loose and broken teeth. One of his fingers remained swollen for over a year after the attack, and he had stated at the trial that he had difficulty concentrating and hearing as a result of the beating he suffered in this incident. Much of the work that Mr. Chaleunphong has done, which is certainly admirable while he has been in custody, including the work that he has done since the last parole hearing, has been focused on creating opportunities for him when he is released back to the community. But as he stated, he was brought to the U.S. by his family in an effort to provide more opportunity for him. There were certainly issues that he claimed he faced at the time of the incident. He said he was in a bad place in life and he felt powerless and he was angry and hurt. There are a lot of 17-year-olds in the city of Lowell who feel those same issues, understandably. But there is certainly a concern that Mr. Chaleunphong is going to face those same issues when he is released from custody, particularly regarding the question regarding his use of substances in the evening of November 20th, 1997. The use of substances, again, because this is not a crime of anger or temper, does not explain the careful orchestration and planning, the collection of weapons, the gathering of individuals, and the planning involved in the actual incident that led to the death of Mr. Molina. Given Mr. Chaleunphong's particular role in this crime, his role in not merely instigating this particular instance, but also in creating the Louse Boys, where it's not a circumstance where older gang members provided an influence or tempted someone into gang life. And the statement that Mr. Chaleunphong took several years to actually renounce the Louse Boys, when in fact, by the time he had renounced the Louse Boys were essentially a defunct organization that was not active in and around the city of Lowell at the time of that renouncing. The Middlesex District Attorney's Office is strongly opposed to parole for Mr. Chaleunphong at this time. I believe that there cannot be confidence that Mr. Chaleunphong will be able to live at liberty without violating the law. There cannot be confidence that his release is not incompatible with the welfare society. And significantly, while he has engaged in good conduct, he's avoided disciplinary actions while serving a sentence and has engaged in programming, parole cannot be granted to him simply as a reward for his good conduct while he was in prison. I think the board must consider the nature of his crime and his role in that crime in determining whether parole is appropriate, and as stated, the Middlesex DA's office opposes parole for Mr. Chaleunphong at this time.
Thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
Okay, counsel, would you like to return? Sir, how are we going to proceed?
Sure. Mr. Chaleunphong was going to make a statement, and then I was going to make a few closing remarks. Thank you.
I would like to thank the parole board for the opportunity to be heard today. I hope that throughout the hearing, I was able to address any concerns that the parole board may have had of me. I'd like to extend my most deepest apologies to Mrs. Molina's family, Mr. Santana's family, and Mr. Lozada's family for all the trauma that I inflicted on them. I'm deeply ashamed for my actions, and not a day goes by where I'm not remorseful for what I've done. As of today, I've been incarcerated for close to 20 years, and what I can say is that I have a great understanding as to how I became the person I was that night of November 20th, 1997. And throughout my incarceration, I used my time productively. I worked on myself eternally so that I would never be that person again, and be that person that is here before you today. I'm just tired of letting people down. Just tired of letting people down. Letting my parents down. Letting my community down. The greater community, the Laotian community, everybody. I'm not going to let them down no more. I'm a different man now. I'm ready to make the transition back into society. If granted parole, I will keep on working with my mentors, Chaleunphong and Levy, so that they can help me with my transition. I'll continue with my sobriety and attend AA and A classes, and I'll further my efforts to get my degree. Furthermore, I will pursue employment somewhere in the barbering field where I can hopefully make a career out of it someday. I will continue to do what I have been doing, but hopefully in society someday. I truly hope that I will be considered for parole. And as the person I am today, and the right people in my life, I truly believe that I will be a productive member in society. Thank you. I'm sorry again for having to put everybody through this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I? Members of the parole board, thank you for the opportunity to address you. When Vingsumai Chaleunphong appeared before this parole board 2 years ago, he and his attorney described his journey he took to becoming the person he was at the time of the hearing. The journey has been aptly described in a letter that's been submitted in the packet for you to consider today. It's been described as a struggle to move from darkness to light, from self-hatred and guilt to a person who has begun to see himself as a worthy human being, a decent person, even even as he struggles from the horror of his past crime. That was a letter submitted by Mr. Sakakini, who's been a mentor that things I connected with shortly before the last parole hearing, but they've been able to continue and build a relationship the past 2 years. For almost 20 years, he's continued this struggle, this journey, and made significant change to becoming a better person. Over the past 2 years, he's challenged himself to dig deeper, to learn more about the roots of his violence, the impact of racism, and how his gang dominated his life as a young man. As always, and I'm sure you hear this, the journey always starts by looking inward. He has struggled. He's challenged himself to learn how to identify his emotions, how to reflect, how to recognize feelings, and then how to deal with his feelings without shutting them down, as is often the way his life was up to the point when he became incarcerated. He had to struggle to understand how he was capable of committing this crime, to take full and complete responsibility, which he has. He has worked to make atonement, to be resilient, to reject who that person was, and to rehabilitate himself. Who was that kid back then in 1997 who committed this murder? He was that person in the darkness, as he's talked to you about today, and I know you've considered all the materials that we've provided. A teenager who was disconnected from his family, a family who'd experienced generational trauma, who themselves used alcohol and substances, who was surrounded by violence, both within the house and within the larger community, who found and committed violence, who found acceptance and belonging in a gang he helped form. In the context of the science and what Dr. Haney talked about, those were his risk factors. This is a struggle. His journey, as he says, and he said to you today, and what he says to the fellow inmates that he mentors, he says, connect the dots. People that are new to their own journeys, connect the dots. You have to do that, but then before you can really start to understand, then you have to start being able to try to make changes. And not to repeat some of what you've talked about, but I would suggest that the evidence is that his journey is carrying the metaphor to the light, continued from the day that he started in prison. As he explained, his heart was no longer in the gang. It was no longer in the gang. He had left it behind. And I think the absence of any disciplinary reports, I think after April 22nd of 2000, which was when he was engaged in the fight, which there was no evidence that's been presented and that we're aware of that was even gang involved. He had left that behind. So even though in his heart he had left it behind, he was still on the journey to figure out how he became involved in a gang in the first place, because I think that young man at that point didn't know. And that's what he's been doing for the past 20 years. His journey started more in earnest when he got to MCI Norfolk, as he's talked with you about how he started early and gradually, and then became to fully embrace his Buddhism, which has now become his core. Its beliefs, its practices he's used as he's learned more about himself to become loving and capable of empathy. It's his lodestar. He uses that as his base with everything else that he's done. The programs that he's worked on, the other work, the other relationships he's built, the responsibilities taken in the prison. That's his starting point. That's a lot of inward work that he's done. And, in the past 2 years, I've talked about Mr. Sakakini, but also Ms. Levy, you've heard from today. He's built relationships with them. And really been able to work on a different level, and I would submit a deeper level, to really better understand himself. From the 18-year-old who was sentenced to life in prison, who never thought he would get out, he's still, and we've talked about this, he's become involved in numerous programs because he wanted to become a better person. look who he's become and how he's been able to work just beyond his internal development and becoming a rehabilitated person, but he's worked to help others. And before someone can do that, before they can actually help others, they have to be able to do it for themselves. And the fact that he has been able to help others, and it's demonstrated in everything, shows you what he has become as a person and what he would be able to do if he were released into the community. He's talked about working with restorative justice, CRA as a mentor, but he's also building bridges outside the walls. His relationship with his family. And it's mentioned in the materials, but just talking about how he had to really work to be able to tell his parents that he loved them, to be able to create those emotions and those feelings and create that bond. His family has supported him. We've seen that. You saw that 2 years ago. But taking it to a next level shows true transformation. He's working to make amends with the broader community. He's organized peace walks. He worked with the national gathering, the Anti-Violence Project, and continues his work, and he will continue his work with his mentor. I would submit, look at how the staff, the administration, and the prison view him. This is a job that he applied for. This is a job that he's had for 5 years, where he does the scheduling, and you know, it's not just working a calendar. Projects are given to him, proposals. You know, there'll be some music he was telling me about. He's got to kind of talk, and you know, Mr. Tressel, you were talking about, like, how do you deal with a conflict? Well, there's a conflict of what music can play and what lyrics are going to be appropriate. And he's got to kind of sit there and navigate that with the people that are making the proposal, because he knows how the best way to make it successful. It shows conflict resolution. It shows problem solving. It shows empathy. And it really just shows how responsible he is. He's much closer to getting his college degree than he was when he was here 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he hadn't gotten his barber certificate. He hadn't even started the classes. He's completed the classes. He's just waiting to sit for the next time that they'll give the final test. They have to have enough people. So he now has the potential to have a vocation, a way to succeed in the community. He's worked hard to understand, internalize, to learn about himself, to embrace himself, to be accepting, and to be loving. He has focused the past 2 years, as I said, to address some of the concerns reflected in your decision, and has taken that time for deeper reflection, to learn about the impact of race and its existence, racism, and its existence in his life and where he lived and how he grew up, and how that contributed to his crimes. What he knows is because he's been able to learn this, to be open to learning, that his gang membership, his misplaced family, was a result of his own self-hatred, his disconnect from positive aspects of family, his need to be respected somehow. And I think, Dr. Bonner, as you suggested, you know, it's recently that he formally renounced officially within the prison when that was accepted in 2016, but I would suggest that from day one in his heart, and as he's told you today and he told you 2 years ago, he had renounced any gang involvement. And there's been nothing in his record in prison would suggest otherwise. When we think of talking about kind of the risk factors and what are the supportive factors in the community, and I would ask, and I know you've read Dr. Haney's report. I think it really captures it, both the 2015 report and the update that was provided here. But he has learned how to think, how to love. He has family supports. He has a positive sense of himself, his conflict resolution skills, his community engagement, and his problem-solving skills. He is most respectfully ready to make the next step. And consistent with the recommendations in Dr. Haney's report and what Vinsamai has talked to you about, he will have community supports. We will have a long-term residential lined up for him. With a period of stability in that, with the substance abuse component, NAA programs and individual therapy. He has the Haley House to help with transitional employment, and as I've stated, he has a vocation. Spiritually, emotionally, professionally, he is prepared. He has the supports to work with. He has worked hard to make meaningful change. He is rehabilitated. He is asking all of you for this opportunity to give him that chance. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, hearing